talk. Okay.
Again. Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the January 2025 MnSTAC Forum, first forum of the year. Thank you for joining us. We are here with some folks in the room, some people joining us virtually for this excellent panel on community forestry and financial support programs for low-income communities. Just a couple of housekeeping notes. One CEU, a link will be posted in the chat at the end of the forum, and that'll be open for a couple hours today. And then save the date. So on Thursday, February 6th, at the Eddie Manderville Chalet at the theater in Theaterworth Park in Minneapolis, we have rescheduled our trivia and potluck trivia. So that'll be really, really fun. Look into your inboxes because you'll see the invite and where to sign up and tell us what you're bringing. And then please put questions in the chat. I'll be monitoring those as we progress, and then hopefully at the end we'll have some time for a little Q&A. Without further ado, I'm gonna introduce our moderator for today. Her name is Rachel Maurice. She works for the Minnesota Department of Natural Resources and is also in the room here with me to my right. And with that, take it away.
All right, well, welcome everyone and thank you for being here. I am gonna go ahead and just start off with our first question, and I will call out to you when I would like for you to respond. So our first question is, please introduce yourself, including your name, the community you work with, and your role. And we're gonna go ahead and start with Josh in the room.
Josh Obermeyer, I work for the city of Minnetonka as the assistant city forester.
Well, let's go to Vanessa.
Hi, I'm Vanessa Larson. I'm a tree inspector for City of St. Louis Park, and administrator of a lot of the tree programs here.
Wonderful. All right, let's go to Brian now.
Hi, I'm Brian Alvin, the forestry supervisor for the city of Burnsville.
Great. And let's go to Monica.
Hi, I'm Monica Randazzo. I'm the Inflation Reduction Act Grant Coordinator with Hennepin County Forestry.
Wonderful, thank you. And then Rachel.
Hi, I'm Rachel Workin. I'm the environmental planner with the city of Ridley. So while I'm not a certified tree inspector, I do more of the desk work involved with our forestry program.
Great, wonderful. Thank you all for being here today. So our first question today is, what drove your community to start offering programs that provide support to low-income residents for tree care and removal? And Rachel, let's maybe start with you.
Sure. I would say that the big impetus for us was emerald ash borer. We're starting to see a lot of our ash trees in a hazardous condition, and we're having really hard conversations with our residents who weren't able to remove their hazardous trees, and looking for ways to support them, and also concerns that a lot of our ash trees that were being removed weren't being replaced. So that led us to looking for ways to, provide some additional financial support to achieve our forestry goals.
Thank you, Rachel. All right, and Monica.
Yeah, so Hennepin County responded to the opportunity through the Inflation Reduction Act grant funds to respond to pretty well documented and known historic inequity and injustice across the county regarding especially EAB management, but also access to tree canopy, access to workforce programming, and many other things. And so I, as a grant-funded position, was not part of seeking this opportunity and this grant, but was hired through the efforts to move into this area of more equity and justice work.
Awesome, thank you. All right, Brian.
Yeah, so similar to Monica and Rachel, I mean, we have, just like most cities, have so many dead ash trees around Burnsville. So, and historically, we have not provided any financial assistance for removals or treatments on private property. We have a pretty good handle on the ash problem on public property, but through the relief grant, it was a really good opportunity to be able to provide that assistance to low-income residents. And so we were able to dedicate $120,000 to the removal of ash trees in front yards on private property or easily accessible areas on private property. And with that, we were able to help 87 households and remove 133 trees. So, which was great because if we weren't able to do that, those trees would probably still be standing right now.
Awesome. Wonderful. Thank you, Brian. And then Vanessa.
Yeah, pretty similar to everybody who has already said, that we've been hearing from residents about their dead or dying ash trees, how they're not able to financially afford removing them, and then also seeing the effects of that discouraging replanting efforts. So if they do have to remove them, they aren't planting them. So we've also taken advantage of the relief funding from the Minnesota DNR to help us remove trees on private property, replace them. We've been injecting ash trees for residents who, their trees in good condition and they're interested in doing that. So preserving trees that way as well.
Thank you, Vanessa. And Josh.
Yeah, similar to everyone else. It's kind of interesting before the IRA or relief funding became available, we were just, as a forestry staff, we're probably one of the most forward-facing divisions out in the community. We're just out talking to people, consultation services, risk trees, and residents were just giving us feedback that they needed help. There's just a lot of dead, dying ash trees, especially in Minnetonka. It's a heavily wooded community, a lot of wetlands, and on some properties where there's just dozens of dead and dying ash trees. And as a division, we were talking, we have a program called Merit. It's kind of a bonus program where we go above and beyond our normal duties. And we had decided to make searching for funding on private property for ash trees for our residents as a part of our Merit program. So we did research. I mean, I think there's a program with the Department of Energy, Hennepin County, City of Minnetonka has something, but there's a lot of bureaucracy involved. There are more so loans and grants. Some of them can be forgiven after 10 years if you stay in your home. And then all of a sudden, this grant funding came out. So it was really timely. So really the opportunity was there and we decided to go for it. And it's been amazing ever since. We have like almost $333,000 to go towards ash removal on private property. 44 applicants. On average, it's like $5,000 per property. Each tree shakes out to be about $1,600. These are just averages, so.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you all. All right, so now moving forward, I think we'll kind of just continue this like back and forth. So we'll start with Josh on this and we'll go through that same order and then have like Rachel start and go back. That sounds good to everyone. Great. All right, so our next question is, what are some of the financial or logistical challenges you faced in running these programs and how have you addressed them?
Yeah, I'd say logistically, just planning out how to administer a grant program. As foresters, we've never done anything exactly like this. I mean, we're used to administering programs from a sense of asset management, GIS, writing up work orders, that sort of thing. But as far as giving out funds, creating an application process, there was a lot of planning that went into creating this program. And it wasn't just forestry staff. I mean, we met as a natural resources division. We got involved with our economic development division because they're used to providing assistance to property owners. And then we also got really heavily involved with our GIS staff. So we have several steps in our grant process. I mean, it's filling out your application, going out to the property, doing an inspection, then eventually you got to hire a contractor to get the trees removed, then you got to plant trees, and keeping track of all that is really important and staying organized. So we basically created a program where we could see everything on a map and there are different steps in the process. And just getting to that point was a lot of work and collaborating was really important and it's paid off. Now, and I'd say financially, we've just run into a couple of issues. We really wanted to make it as easy as possible for our residents to apply for this funding. So they've self-certified their income. We ran into one resident who had a very expensive house on Lake Minnetonka, yet their income showed that they met the requirements. So that was a bit of a challenge and we worked through it.
much. Yep. Vanessa.
Yeah, so we also, yeah, we had to, setting up the program for homeowners to utilize was a lot of consultation, working with our communications department. I would say the biggest logistical challenge, I mean, because that was a lot, setting up the workflow and everything. But all the way through, I think the biggest challenge is reaching a variety of homeowners, to educate about the program, having different modes of communication, which we have, but like we have door hangers that have the program details, translated into a couple different languages. We created a web page. We have interest forms that are available for residents, both online and in paper at like city locations. We've sent out information in our print flyer that all residents receive, and then we've had some social media posts. But in the end, it seems, well, I mean, we reached so many people with those modes of communication, but we also seemed to miss residents who later joined the program through the condemnation process, where they had an ash tree that was condemned and hadn't heard about the program, but were able to kind of check a box on their notification letting us know that they were interested. So it ended up being really good, but it's just this constant gauging how to reach everyone who can benefit.
Thank you, Vanessa. Brian?
Yeah, again, really similar to what Josh and Vanessa were saying. So not really any financial challenges because we did receive the money to fund this program. But for logistical challenges, just from the beginning, there was the concern, we knew it was gonna be a lot of work and a lot of time. So how do we fit this into our regular workload? And we did have to involve many other departments, just like Josh was saying, GIS, communications, our natural resources staff, and it was a lot of time and a lot of work. But one good thing about the grant too is we did get funding for a part-time tree inspector. And so when the program was up and running, he was instrumental in the success of it because he would go out and put the door hangers on doors and speak with residents. And really, we wanted to get the word out throughout the city equally through all different parts to make sure everybody had access to this and had a chance to apply for it. And our sustainability coordinator here was able to help out, and she did a ton of work as well. So really, we were able to make it work, but that was the biggest probably logistical challenge was figuring out how are we going to make this a success with everything else that we have going on. But we figured it out and it worked just fine. But we sent out a citywide email to all the residents first. And so that we did get quite a bit of response from that, but we did also put door hangers on doors. We met with residents. We put a social media post out, and even with that, we still had to really kind of go out into the community to identify trees that could qualify and get residents to apply for it. In some cases, we really had to make multiple visits to their houses to try to get a hold of them. And so it did take a lot of time, a lot of effort, but it really paid off in the long run.
Thank you, Brian. Monica?
Yeah, so I think that the application to IRA grant funds is sort of a good show of the financial challenges to addressing issues with like workforce and then also the management of EABM private property. But we have been running this IRA programming for almost a year. And so we don't have like a ton of really concrete examples of financial challenges, at least. But some of the logistical challenges have just been those early growing pains of a program. And so not being necessarily prepared for what the community's response would be and the level of need across the county. So for example, when we first opened applications to the tree removal assistance program through the county, it was flooded within 24 hours, and we had to shut it down to take a break and sort of assess what we can do and how we can manage that. And we tried our best to sort of like limit that overload and stress. We're a small team, and so it's not super realistic to be able to process 250 applications rapidly. But we have encountered the same thing each time we've opened this application. So there's just this massive need across the county for the tree removal assistance. Very few applicants have not qualified for the program as well. So we still, every time we open the application, get a ton of folks responding. We get a ton of like contact from residents regularly. And that has just presented a lot of other like challenges within that. So how quickly can we get our program running? How effective will it be if we're moving super quickly? And just working within the confines of like a big organization, a big government organization, and how do we work across the county? So since we're a baby program, I will just say those challenges remain, and we probably have many more that we don't know about yet to come. But that is the nature of the program, as you know, I think this panel will speak to many, many logistical challenges.
Thank you, Monica. And Rachel.
Yeah, I think our experience has been really similar to other municipalities in Hennepin County. We really appreciate how the state structured the relief grant. Not requiring a match has been key, I think, for us with being able to implement the program. I think if we had to require a match from our residents, that would be a huge barrier. But without requiring a match, it's just such a net positive. When we started the program, we decided we wanted to hire, one contractor who would do the tree removal work and then a separate contractor who would do the replacement tree planting. And we also allowed income qualified residents to request new trees, even if they weren't having an ash tree removed. The value of our contract was high enough that we had to go out for public bid under municipal contracting law, which we had never done for our forestry work. So that was a really good learning experience. And the contract was awarded to Cars Tree Service, who we hadn't worked with before. And so that was a little nerve-wracking, working with like a new company for the first time and, having to put faith in them to interact with our residents, but they've been doing a great job with tree removal for our residents. And while our initial contract was 100 trees, we filled all those spots within one newsletter article. So we've expanded the program as we still have additional relief funding for even more work. So we're just plugging along, and we'll be starting our tree planting this summer. So I think, similar to Monica, where we struggled with it first was that initial influx of interest and having staff time to do all the site visits. We were really lucky to get an intern through the Climate Impact Corps, Emily, who I think is on this call, through AmeriCorps. And she's been key in getting all those site visits done and making sure, all the trees are marked and that they qualify for the program. So that's been really helpful. I think the one logistical thing that we've struggled with is for the ash trees that we are removing, do we want to focus only on really low cost ash removal trees to be able to reach as many residents as possible? Or do we want to also include removing ash trees that are really difficult to access, like in backyards or, things like that, where there is a need for them to be removed, but they take a lot larger proportion of our grant funds. So that's just been kind of an ethical dilemma that we've debated at the staff level. But it's just been now that we've had the newsletter article, and we also integrated the program into our abatement letters, which has really turned negative interactions into positive ones. And we're also doing some more outreach with our schools in this upcoming year and our CAP agency.
Thank you, Rachel. All right, so our next question is, what strategies have you used to effectively reach low-income families who might benefit from these programs? Rachel, go ahead.
Yeah, so as I mentioned, we've started integrating promotion of the program into our hazardous tree letters. We've also developed a door hang that we're going to start putting out on properties where we notice ash trees with signs of EAB infestation. Emily's, our AmeriCorps intern, is also planning an Arbor Day event with one of our schools that has a high number of low-income students, and they'll be bringing home flyers about the program to their parents. We've also been we'll be tabling at our senior center event, and then working with our community action partnership agency have been some of the strategies that we've used or are planning to use through the program.
Thank you. Monica?
Yeah, excuse me. Yeah, so we have, because of the time that we've been running, and then also because of the overwhelming interest in the program, we actually have not had a ton of opportunities to experiment with different ways to do outreach and to directly promote the tree removal program within communities across the county. But then looking at the applications that have come in for this tree removal assistance program, they are reflective of the communities that we intended to serve and most directly work with for this program. And so we're looking at like CGEST and opportunity zones across the county. So it has just sort of worked out on its own in regards to the tree removal assistance program. And then hopefully as interest sort of slows down a bit, we can do more targeted outreach about that specific component of the IRA grant. For other community outreach and education opportunities, we just have made a lot of effort to connect directly with residents. So going to events that are already held in communities. We bring publications and materials and things like that to share, but are mostly prioritizing getting to know people just on like one-to-one basis. And so starting there and trying to learn more from community members and residents what is needed and expected of us as like a large organization.
Brian?
So probably similar to most programs, but one of the requirements of our program is if they had a tree removed, they had to replant at least one tree on their property. And so that led to many discussions with residents about where the best place would be to plant their tree. So it would give it the best chance to thrive through maturity, and what species is most appropriate for the site, and the pros and cons of different species, proper planting techniques. And so on kind of a one-to-one level, we were able to engage with the residents who had trees removed to educate them on proper planting and where to plant, and really the benefits of why we wanted to replant to replace all the trees that have been removed. So it really gave us a good opportunity to educate those residents. So that was good. And we kind of going back to what Rachel was talking about, I just wanted to build off of that a little bit about what we did with our program, removing trees in front yards. We discussed that as well versus trees in the backyards, because obviously if we started going in people's backyards, it was going to cost a lot more money. And so we wouldn't be able to help as many people as we wanted to. But just from writing up the RFQ and RFP, it's like, how do you quote those? Because one 20-inch tree in the backyard could be 3 times as much as another 20-inch tree. So we tried to keep it simple and just keep it to the front yard trees and get those removed. And I do think that we were able to help more people. I don't know. It sounds like your programs are still going. Ours is completed. We started in June and it was finished in November. And we still have a lot of trees out there. So in hindsight, probably maybe could use more money, but if anybody has any ideas of if you're planning on going into backyards or maybe taking out some of these more difficult trees, like that's what we're running into right now. Because a lot of people were disappointed that we weren't going to accept those as part of this program. But I'd be interested to hear, just kind of going off tangent, what if other cities have done backyard removals, or if you're doing the same thing where it's just easily accessible in the front yard.
I can go off of that real quick. Yeah, so our contract, so we're partnering with Shadywood Tree Experts, and the way they quoted it was with front yard trees, side yard trees, and backyard trees. Backyard trees are obviously more expensive, and we decided to basically just remove every ash tree on every applicant's property that could be a risk to a target. We decided not to do high power because typically the power company takes care of that, but we would do connecting lines to houses, we would do a shed, we do a driveway. It was really, if it's in some of these woods, we'd say, nope, that tree can fall apart and die on its own. Even if it was really far back in someone's backyard, you say that tree can fall apart and die. But the ones that could hurt somebody or really damage a structure, we just decided to include all of those.
Interesting. Yeah, I'd be curious to see how you quoted those out, or how you got quotes for those. Because yeah, that would be a challenge, but because we got a lot of calls and complaints about not being able to take out certain trees and only, the trees in the front. But just even with that, I mean, we were able to easily spend the money that we had allocated for it. So that's good.
Yeah, it is tricky, and the cost went up for the backyard. And I will say, there was a couple in particular where our contractor needed to set up. It's a really, really large crane in the street. You can't even park in somebody's yard, and it's like, whether you rent it for an hour or a day, it's $6,500. So there were some jobs that got a little tight for them, but I think there's some other jobs that they made out quite well on, and it kind of evens out in the end. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the way that we set up our program, we didn't really put any parameters around where the ash tree was. And I mean, I think for backyards, if it was over 20 inches, then it became something that we would look at more closely, but otherwise it was all just kind of under contract, and it seemed to work out fine. There was really a variety of sizes of trees, some in power, some not. But we did remove all of those for residents who qualified. And the way that we sort of tried to prioritize the areas where there might be more low-income residents that would qualify for the program was we already, through the Growing Shade tool, we have environmental justice priority areas in St. Louis Park. So we took our citywide ash survey that we do annually, and we just focused it on those areas first, and then anyone with an ash tree front or backyard that was infested, that we could, it's pretty easy to tell, would get a door hanger with all the program details and contact information for us. And then those whose trees were condemned we also have in the abatement letter an area for them to indicate that their interest in the program, and then we would set up a consultation. And we also worked it into, we do consultations with residents all over town every season and on various topics. So we would work the program in to those conversations whenever we could.
Thank you, Vanessa. Great. Our next question is, what lessons have you learned about breaking down barriers to access for communities that have historically lacked green space? You've kind of already addressed that. And so we have Josh Straw.
Yeah, I'd say generally just offering excellent customer service to everyone, very clear and concise communication that's easy for residents to understand, and then especially for us, making it really easy for them to apply for this program. As I mentioned earlier, our economic development division, for people to apply for their loans, there's some people, for example, they could get a $5,000 loan to help them out with house repairs, but they look at all the paperwork processes, and a lot of them just say, I'm not interested in even doing this. So we wanted to make this as easy as possible for our residents to apply for, self-certifying their income. And really, I mean, just having very few questions on our application, signing agreement, and then just walking them through the process and really not putting a lot of work on them and letting us take care of it on the back end. And it's worked out great for us.
Thank you. And then I know, Rachel, you have to leave a little early, so if you wanted to answer this question before you have to pop off.
Yeah, I rearranged, so I'm
Okay.
so we can stick with the order.
Okay, great. Sounds good. All right, Vanessa.
Yeah, so very similar to Josh. We wanted to set the program up so that all of the work was on our end and as little as possible for the homeowners. So it's a super easy interest form, or even just a phone call, set up a consultation. They don't have to contract with anybody themselves. We do that up front. So they're not, it's not like a cost share reimbursement situation where they have to front the money. And we just wanted it to be just super easy. I would say that some of the lessons that we've learned that we're kind of still working on is like our program doesn't address residents in multifamily housing because our eligibility is based on personal income and ownership of private property. So that's a challenge that I think we're always thinking about trying to figure out. And then and we had a lot of interest in the beginning too that made this harder, but now that things have calmed down a little bit and we're not like out actively condemning trees or anything, I think we'd like to do more tabling at events, community events, and we're also applying for additional grant assistance to broaden the reach in our community and hopefully engage neighborhood groups and local organizations to help us connect with residents in more creative ways.
Thank you, Vanessa. Ryan?
Yeah, this program really gave us a good opportunity to go out and engage with the community in all different parts of town, especially the environmental justice areas. And in a lot of cases, there's definitely a language barrier, which we would work through. We could get our community engagement team involved with translating, or just making multiple visits. Maybe we could talk to a family member or use technology in order to explain what was going on, explain what we were there for. A lot of times we'd show up in a city vehicle and the first thing they would think of is, well, something's wrong. The city's here and, we're in trouble for something. And so just getting that message through, like, no, we're trying to help you. And once we were able to explain what the program was about, in some cases we would have to actually bring a paper copy of the application, walk them through it, have them or fill it out with them. Because maybe they didn't have access to a computer or phone, especially with elderly residents. We found that a lot too, where they weren't able to, even though all the program was all set up online, that was a barrier as well for some people. So, but we were able to work through that in many cases, and yeah, we worked through it, and gives us I think more credibility and helped us earn more trust through the community too, because again, when they initially think that we're there for the wrong reasons, we actually, once we helped them out and got the tree out, we did develop quite a bit of trust with those residents. So that was good.
Thank you, Brian. Monica?
Yeah, so I would say we have not been doing this work for long enough to really speak to whether we are reducing barriers yet. I think that there are so many questions about whether what we right now see as barriers are being effectively addressed or not. And so we do make an effort, like a great effort to reduce language barriers. So we have translations available as well as translators available. We also have made a lot of effort to maintain our staff availability as much as possible. And so actually just saving and dedicating time to speaking with residents over the phone, in person, whatever we can do to stay connected with people. And then we kind of, through that, have learned about some more specific barriers that weren't considered early on. And so, like the online application process was really difficult for some people. And so we moved to also offering a paper application, and then are trying to figure out other ways to make applications as, readily available as possible. But with so many other things, so many other parts of this programming, I think that we truthfully just don't know because we have not dedicated the time and energy to learn through meaningful established relationships with community organizations and community members who would be able to give us like more direct insight into how to reduce barriers that I think we don't have too deep an understanding of institutionally. So yes, committing time, nurturing relationships, and I think lowering expectations of being able to report out our accomplishments or lessons learned beyond recognition that there's just like a long road ahead.
Thank you, Monica. Rachel?
Yeah, for building trust, I think my preference is always to push people to fill applications out digitally, but to Brian's point, like that's not always possible when implementing this specific program based on our target audience. So there've definitely been like a lot of times where we've brought the paper application to a resident's home to have them and walk them through that. And so being able to do that, I think has been key. And also with Vanessa's point about having the city pay up front rather than be a reimbursement has been huge. And we're really grateful that the program was set up this way and the grant was set up this way where that's not usually the case. With working with low income residents, we know that when residents pay the upfront cost and we reimburse them, that technically they're supposed to be reporting that as income that they receive. And so that can impact their eligibility for other income qualified programs in the future. If they're getting a check from the city for that amount of money. So being able to pay that upfront invoice is really key for us in terms of having residents want to participate. Yeah, it's just really been a net positive. We just really build this as like a service that we're able to provide to our residents, knowing that no one wants to be in this situation of having to remove an ash tree. So many times the resident was the one who planted the ash tree when they first moved into their home in 1965. And it's a hard decision to have to take it down.
Rachel, correct me if I'm wrong, but do you have your program offered for multifamily housing as well?
Okay, that's a really good question. So we did have that in our grant application, and we did start our program where we were offering it to properties that were considered affordable by the Met Council. When we first issued the notice of the program, we had so much interest that we decided temporarily, at least for the initial round, to focus on property owners. So while we did have a couple multifamilies in there, the majority of the people who we accepted are the property owners themselves. However, we are in this next round of tree removals, including ash removals at our CAP Community Action Partnership owned properties. So that's a really big source of affordable homes in Fridley. So we're really grateful to be able to do that because they have a really, really small operating budget, and this was a huge source of stress for them. And we're also doing some tree planting at one of our manufactured home communities, which is great because they removed a bunch of ash trees before the program was in place and haven't replanted. So this is a great opportunity to reforest there at a really income affordable housing community.
Awesome, thank you, Rachel. All right, so I think we'll do one more question and then we'll have it open for questions from the audience. And our last question that we're gonna go with is, are there policy changes that you would advocate for to better support low-income families in accessing tree care services? Rachel, do you wanna kick, if there's someone else who wants to kick us off as well, then you're welcome.
I wish I could think of a better answer than just like more money. Yeah, I think with the money, we're able to, get it in the right hands. So I'm trying to think of a better answer, and maybe hopefully another panelist will come up with something more creative.
No, that's the right answer. More money. So, but I thought I heard at one point that the state was talking about providing some assistance or a rebate or something for people that have removed an ash tree or have treated their ash trees. I don't know if there's any traction with that or what happened, but yeah, that would be really nice because the people in Burnsville that weren't able to take advantage of our program when it was open, I mean, there's still a big need for it. And I know for the next couple of years at least, I mean, I'm going to have those tough conversations with people who just can't afford it. And, we're going to need to get these trees removed, but how? I mean, so it would be really nice. It was huge for me to be able to go and like, yes, if this tree qualifies for this program, here you go. Let's, because then it's a benefit for both sides. We get it taken out because it's not going to affect public safety or fall into the street. And then they get their tree removed and they don't have to worry about it anymore. So yeah, any kind of policy change at the state level, I think would be great. So I don't know if anybody has any insight on anything that's going on there, but that would be awesome if it happened.
Anyone else from our panel have?
Yes. I will not pretend that I am particularly well educated in like policy development or reform or anything like that. That is not my area of expertise. So I don't have very specific policy recommendations either. I'm with Rachel and Brian. More money, I think, more money directly into the hands of those who need it. But what I would say, kind of related to like building trust with communities, is also trusting that they actually know what their needs are, really with a lot more clarity and specifics, I think, than we might be able to attain through writing and proposing policy. So committing time to like learning from residents who probably have a lot of like large scale solution ideas that maybe we could like create more space for learning and integrating into work.
Thank you.
I got a bit different take on that. Yeah, so with the relief grant, there's a condition that you pay prevailing wages. I believe that's a state thing and not just a Minnesota DNR specific thing, but just as an example, somebody hauling brush for a tree care company on prevailing wages is going to make over $60 an hour. So our contractor and their employees obviously love those jobs. They're making excellent money. I mean, sometimes 3 times more than what they normally make. But I will say, well, it's great for them. That does stimulate some economic growth, but we're not getting as many trees removed because we're definitely overpaying for the cost of these tree removal. I mean, it just jacks up the prices substantially. So I know that's a state thing, but I think it's kind of ridiculous and makes things massively overpriced. And then I'd say one other thing, just looking forward, at least in Minnetonka, a lot of the areas where there isn't a lot of tree canopy cover are areas where there are apartment complexes or businesses, and a lot of low-income families don't own homes, and there's renters. So that's a tricky area. And if there's some sort of initiative to help small business owners, not all small business owners are wealthy, some just barely get by. So just looking at that and keeping that in mind.
Yeah, I pretty much second all of that everybody said. Just being able to broaden the scope of what we can do and who we can help would be amazing.
Great. Thank you all. Thank you all for being here and for answering our questions and providing your insight. Super valuable. I'm gonna pass it over to Sonia for questions.
Yeah, and these questions are, I think, general, so any panelist feel free. Oh, what?
Except for this.
Oh,
This one.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. The first question. Apologies. There is a question on how does Hennepin County work with municipalities like St. Louis Park to not duplicate services for residents? So if someone lives both in the city and the county, is that an issue? And if so, how is it addressed? So either, I think, Vanessa or Monica or
Rachel. Oh, Rachel or Josh, they're all.
or Josh. Yeah, they're all in Hennepin.
Yeah.
Monica
Yeah.
can answer that since she's at Hennepin County.
Yeah, that's true.
Sure.
I can follow up if she needs.
Yeah, so with the working with residents directly, we, for municipalities that we've spoken to in regards to like, especially with tree condemnations and those that we've had an opportunity to come up with a plan for, for every resident that we receive an application from, reach out directly. We also, if we are working with a resident who has shared any information about their work with the municipality, with support from any other organization, then we'll reach out directly to with, clarifying questions or, to let whoever know that they are part of our program. And so this is like going to be addressed with our contractors or whatever, but it is all a work in progress. So for any municipalities who have like feedback and requests, we are always wanting to meet again and sort of find the best way to work together. So it's a bit of a non-answer, but reach out, you can email me.
I would say, I mean, I guess for us, we haven't really seen any of that crossover. Our programs are like slightly different. So there have been situations where we might like a resident is really interested, and for some reason in like how we wrote our program, we can't help, but we know that the county might be able to, so we can like I don't know. For the most part, we can help them, and we just haven't, I guess, run into too much crossover yet.
Yeah, we haven't ran into too much crossover. I think our program launched a little bit earlier, and I mean, we filled up quickly. People that have called since, we've said Hennepin County opens up their application period briefly from time to time, and we've connected them with Monica, but really not a lot of crossover issues in that regard.
I would imagine that, if you're doing site visits for everyone, potentially if you go,
Yeah.
you're gonna go and see if if it's already been removed. Then
Yes.
you're probably not gonna be funding removal twice.
Right, absolutely, yeah,
So,
we check the whole
I think that would
process
be-
along the way, yeah,
Seems like it would be hard to double up, maybe.
yeah.
So, great.
Cool. Next question, which is 3 related questions. So for anyone, do you provide a list of recommended replacement trees?
Or no, maybe this is.
Oh, this is for, do you recommended replacement trees? And if so, does it include trees you can't plant? And then also, if you curate a list, how do you determine the trees on the list? So do you have a list? How do you come up with it? And then does it include trees not to plant?
Hennepin County does have a published recommended tree species list that the other foresters have worked on with their communications department. That's pretty comprehensive of Hennepin County recommendations. But then for the tree removal assistance program, we are replanting on every homeowner's site, and we are creating, this will be starting in the spring, we're creating like a tailored list for each site. And so we have our tree species list of what we've ordered and what we'll have available, but then for each resident, it'll be sort of like, you know, their pick out of 5 different options. And so we are doing a lot of planning for just direct work with that resident. So we're talking about like, you know, options based on site, diversity of the canopy, and all of that. So yes.
In Burnsville, we do provide a list, so they have a choice between about 15 different species that they can plant. And then once they make their selection, then either the following spring or fall, then the city purchases the trees and we actually deliver the trees to their property. So it makes it a lot easier. They're responsible for planting it. We don't provide a do not plant list because as long as they have to choose off of the list that we give them. So there's really no possibility of them picking a tree that's not on the list. So, but we do educate and tell them, give them advice on which species would be most appropriate for their site. And yeah, we do have a list for them, but not a do not plant list. On our city website, like throughout the city, yes, we do. And we do have a do not plant list on that. But for this program, no.
Yeah, ours is very similar to Brian's. We're doing a tree pickup event, so our residents will come pick up their trees rather than doing delivery. But we have 10 or 12 species that people can choose from. And we're meeting with individual property owners. We're actually in that process right now. We just kind of planned all this out just this week. So we'll meet with property owners, and we're hoping that most property owners will plant 2 trees for every one removed. We understand that a lot of them aren't going to meet that. It's just going to be too crowded. So it's going to be at least 1 for 1. And we'll just pick out what trees are best suited for that site. And we've done just a combination of smaller trees, some that are shade tolerant, some that need full sun. So small trees, ornamental, shade trees, conifers, just kind of mixing it up to find a tree that can fit in every spot or character of each individual property. And we're just going to work with the property owners. We're not going to tell people you have to do this. We'll make recommendations and work things out with each property owner. And we will be expecting property owners to plant their own trees unless they absolutely cannot. We'll be utilizing our tree stewards. If someone's elderly and they don't have a family member or friend that can help them. So
yeah, that's been a little bit of a challenge because some people have said they physically can't plant a tree, but usually they can find a family member or somebody or a neighbor or somebody that can plant it. And we did decide to deliver them. Our first plan was to have one site where everybody could come and pick it up, but we found that was a barrier though in itself, where because we're offering containerized trees, a lot of people don't have the ability or the vehicle to be able to come and pick that up from the site and bring it back to their house. So we decided, well, let's remove that barrier and let's just bring it right to them. So that's why we decided to do that.
We have contracted the tree planting, and that has been really nice because there are many participants who, like you said, wouldn't be able to plant the tree. So that has been a good thing for our program. And we do have a list as well that they can choose from.
Most of our
Go for it, Rachel.
just that most of our tree planting efforts in the past few years have been funded through DNR grants. So I don't know if there's been an oak or a maple planted in the city of Fridley in like the past 7 years. So residents, I feel like, are always, because they're overrepresented in our canopy. So residents are always really surprised when that's not an option. Similar to Vanessa, we decided to contract out the tree planting service, which, you know, it does use more grant funding, so you're not able to reach as many people, but kind of for the reason she said, that's what we went with. So we'll be working with Tree Trust, and the way we structured our quote our quoting and how they responded was there's an option where they provide additional hand holding for the resident in terms of helping with like tree selection or tree location. So we worked with them on developing a tree planting list that we were pretty confident that we'd be able to find, the fall species for. We know from our tree sale that residents tend to prefer smaller trees, while we try and encourage them to plant larger trees to replace more of the ecological value of ash trees. So we do tend to kind of suggest, here's our list and here's some things to consider when you're picking your first and second choice tree species and giving them, some options, but that don't include autumn blaze maples, which everyone takes really poorly.
Yeah. All right, next question. Was anyone able to offer financial assistance for treatment? Maybe Vanessa? Any thoughts on whether treatment assistance could be structured to work within the time confines of the program? Anybody doing stuff with treatment of ash trees?
Yeah, we do. Yep. Yeah, that is an interesting question. I mean, it's been really nice to be able to offer that to residents who their ash tree is still in good enough condition to be treated, and then they just really don't want to lose the tree. And for those who participated, it will depend on what funding remains, but for those who participated right away, in 2 years, if we still have funding, we would be able to help them with a second treatment. But it is a concern that, going forward, that's maybe not something that they could, afford to do themselves. So I don't think we have a really good solution to that, but yeah, that's how we're set up to do our program.
I can add, so with our initial grant, we had funds to inject, whether it was injecting ash tree that wasn't too far along, which those are rare nowadays, Minnetonka, or re-injection. But we have decided to shift those funds towards removal just because it's just clear to us. We don't get people saying, I can't afford injecting my trees. I just don't hear that, but it's common here. I cannot afford to remove these ash trees. So we just felt like the need was higher with removing infested ash trees that were risk to targets on private property. We've just kept it simple and are sticking with that.
All right, next question. We just have a couple minutes here. How can we in rural communities, says the questioner, help implement grant programs to A, protect trees before the spread hits them, and B, subsidize the removal of condemned trees to help reduce the burden on government and individuals?
Yeah, I can start. I think a big issue in a lot of these rural communities, they don't have a forester. I mean, often looking at these grants, if someone's applying for it, it's the public works director or somebody in community development. So somehow creating relationships, which I know the DNR does, but just having somebody that's willing to take initiative in that community to go for these funds, because there's definitely a need there, but it is tricky because they don't always have the staff that we have in forestry in the metro area.
And that's definitely a benefit of our relief programs, that they do have funding for staff time. Like Brian mentioned, they had hired a tree inspector to work on their program. So I would say that's potentially a selling point for rural communities to apply for these relief grant funds. If you would like to build up this program, this could be a good way to maybe justify that for your city budget and get a foot in the door. So, and I'm always happy to answer questions. So.
I don't know.
Go ahead.
Oh, I don't know if all governments would have the appetite for this, but if you don't have access to the relief grant program, our city offers, a voluntary assessment program for emergency repairs for things like sewer breaks, where the city pays the upfront cost of the work and then assesses the cost to the property owner over time. That's something that you could potentially consider for, doesn't subsidize the cost for the individual, but it gives them a little bit of time to pull the funds together and spreads it out over a longer period. So that's another idea.
Awesome. Well, thank you to all of our panelists and Rachel for moderating. I have just put the Z link for the ISA CEU form. That'll be open for a couple hours today, so you do get one credit. And then we will see you on February 6th for our trivia sign up in Theodore Worth Park. Otherwise, have a wonderful rest of your week, and thank you for coming.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.